Hello and welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm your host, Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold, and as always, I'm joined by Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report. Chris, thank you for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me again.
We've got a busy week of baseball to discuss. First and foremost, something we forgot to mention last week. Outfielder Riley Greene, utility player Zach McKinstry, they won American League Silver Slugger Awards, the first Tigers to win the Silver Slugger since Miguel Cabrera in 2016. For the outfielders, Aaron Judge, Riley Greene, Byron Buxton. They were the three winners among the six finalists, with Cody Bellinger, Julio Rodriguez, and George Springer as the other finalists. Although Bellinger and Rodriguez did not win anything, George Springer was named the Silver Slugger winner at designated hitter. For utility players, it was Zach McKinstry as the winner among the three finalists, with Michael Garcia and Ben Rice as the other finalists. You talk about an amazing 2025 season for Zach McKinstry. Age 30 season, sixth season in the big leagues. He makes the All-Star game for the first time, wins the Silver Slugger for the first time, and his 3.2 F-WAR ranked 55th among 145 qualified position players. Congrats to both Riley Greene and Zach McKinstry for winning the Silver Slugger. Now looking ahead to this week, some big news coming up. Second baseman Gleyber Torres, he has until 4 p.m. Tuesday to accept or decline the 1-year, $22.025 million qualifying offer. Does he accept? Does he decline? What are your quick thoughts?
I have to believe he accepts, although I've been wrong about everything lately, so who knows? But to me, I just don't see the market out there for him as for a long-term deal. Like, who else is going to need a second baseman? Maybe Seattle if Blanco leaves, San Francisco maybe. Like, I guess there are a couple teams out there, but to me, it makes more sense to just kind of bet on yourself, take the $22 million, go out and try to have the best season you can.
That's where things are at, is Gleyber Torres is looking for a 4-year contract in free agency, and if teams are willing to offer 4 years, then I expect them to decline the qualifying offer. If teams are only interested in 1, 2, or 3 years, then I expect him to accept the qualifying offer. I think that's where Gleyber Torres and his agent are at with this decision. And I've heard rumblings of his market being around 3 years, $45 million, which isn't what he's looking for. He wants 4 years and probably in that $75 million range. I don't think he's going to get that, which is ultimately why I think he is going to accept the qualifying offer and return to the Tigers. However, only 14 of 144 players have accepted the qualifying offer since the system was implemented in 2012. But if one of the 13 is going to accept in 2025, I think it's going to be Gleyber Torres, returning to the Tigers in 2026 on a 1-year, $22.025 million contract. More on Gleyber Torres later, because we need to spend some time talking about Tarik Skubal. Yes, we will talk about the contract extensions and the trade rumors. But first, let's give a massive Days of Roar to Tarik Skubal for winning the 2025 American League Cy Young Award. This guy received 26 of 30 first place votes from the Baseball Writers Association of America, with the other 4 first place votes belonging to Boston Red Sox left-hander Garrett Crochet, who voted for Garrett Crochet over Tarik Skubal. 2 writers from the New York chapter, 1 writer from the Texas chapter, and 1 writer from the Toronto chapter. Tarik Skubal won unanimously with all 30 first-place votes in 2024, but he fell short of another unanimous victory by just 4 first-place votes here in 2025. For those who don't know, the voting happens after the regular season and before the postseason. And Chris, the voters got this one right, didn't they?
Absolutely. Like, the one argument I've seen in favor of Crochet was that, he faced better competition, but you do what you can. And Skubal ended up with a better F-WAR, a better B-WAR, a lower ERA. He didn't have quite as many strikeouts or innings pitched, but he was dominant. It was plain to see. He had a couple monstrous games during the season and in the playoffs. Obviously, like you said, they don't come into play, or the playoff games don't matter to the award, but he's an amazing pitcher. One of the best I've seen in my lifetime, and one of the best in Tigers history, and he deserves the award for sure.
The company that he has joined is incredible. So aside from the voting, by winning Tarik Skubal, He became the first back-to-back AL Cy Young winner since Pedro Martinez in 1999-2000, and only the second Tigers pitcher to do so. The first was Denny McLain in the late 1960s. In total, 23 pitchers in MLB history have won multiple Cy Young awards since it was first given out in 1956. Tarik Skubal has joined Roger Clemens, Randy Johnson, Steve Carlton, Greg Maddux, Sandy Koufax, Tom Seaver, Jim Palmer, Pedro Martinez, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Denny McLain, Bob Gibson, Gaylord Perry, Brett Saberhagen, Tom Glavine, Johan Santana, Tim Lincecum, Roy Halladay, Corey Kluber, Jacob deGrom, and Blake Snell. That is the company that Tarik Skubal is now a part of. It's just incredible. And in 2025, Tarik Skubal led the American League with a 2.21 ERA, 33 walks, 241 strikeouts across 195 and 1/3 innings in 31 starts, 4.4% walk rate, 32.2% strikeout rate. He actually improved from a 174 ERA plus in 2024 to a 187 ERA plus in 2025. To clarify what that means, ERA plus, it has an average of 100. So Tarik Skubal was 74% better than league average in 2024. And then he was 87% better than league average in 2025. So he took his game to the next level. And who knows what's possible in 2026, but no AL pitcher has ever won the Cy Young in 3 consecutive seasons. It's only happened in the National League, where both Randy Johnson and Greg Maddux were honored 4 times in a row. Is Tarik Skubal going to be a 3-time Cy Young winner? Not just 3 times in his career, but 3 times in a row, 2024, 2025, and maybe 2026.
I wouldn't put money on anybody else right now. I think he's got to be the favorite heading into next year.
So some favorite Tarik Skubal memories from the 2025 season. The first one that stands out to me, May 25th against the Cleveland Guardians at Comerica Park. I actually didn't cover that game because my son Daxton, he had his baptism that day. But first pitch was at 11:35 a.m. The game was on the Roku broadcast. We had family over at our house after Daxton's baptism. And going into the 6th inning, people from my family, they started to gather around the TV because there was a perfect game watch and a no-hitter watch for Tarik Skubal in that one. And yes, he lost the no-hitter in a perfect game there in that 6th inning, but he still made history. He tossed a complete game shutout on fewer than 100 pitches, which is called a Maddux in honor of the legend Greg Maddux. But Skubal did it while striking out 13 batters, the most ever in a Maddux. He also allowed just 2 hits in the 94-pitch masterpiece. And the final pitch, a 102.6 mile an hour strikeout to end the game. It was the fastest strikeout pitch thrown by an MLB starter since pitch tracking began in 2008. It was the most dominant performance I've ever seen by a Tigers pitcher in my lifetime, even better than Justin Verlander's no-hitters with the Tigers. And I got to watch it from the living room with my dad and my son because Daxton, yes, he was just a little baby, and he still is. He's only 7 months old, but we were sitting there in the living room watching this unfold, and it was just incredible. It was kind of cool that I was there in the living room as opposed to being in the press box, even though from the looks of it, the Comerica Park crowd was electric. And then my other favorite Skubal game from the 2025 season, June 29th against the Minnesota Twins. It was Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, 7 p.m. first pitch. There were 40,000 fans at Copa. I think it was probably the best atmosphere of the season, including the playoffs. And Tarik Skubal put on a show for his fans. 7 scoreless innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 13 strikeouts, throwing 93 pitches. In that game, Skubal struck out 8 of the first 9 batters he faced, including 7 in a row. It was incredible stuff from Skubal. So those are the 2 that stand out. The Maddux against the Guardians and then the Sunday Night Baseball game against the Twins.
Yeah, those are 2 memorable ones for me too. I remember them talking about in that Twins game about, Skubal always starts the game off with a fastball, and Buxton was ready for it and he threw him a changeup. I was like, oh, that's fun. 2 that kind of stick out to me. One of them was, and I love a good pitching duel. And when Skubal took on Hunter Brown, I think that was in August, and they both pitched really well, and the Tigers eventually won 1-0 on a walk-off walk, I think it was, which ended up being the reason they made the playoffs, because that was the one extra game they had over Houston. But just watching those 2 guys go back and forth was great. And then there was another Skubal game against Cleveland, not the one where he threw the ball between his legs, but it was another game where he actually didn't get the win, but it was another super close game. And then it's memorable to me because then the Tigers, it felt like the knockout blow for Cleveland, which is, lesson learned there. But that was when they got to Kate Smith in extra innings. Trey Sweeney had a home run off of him in the opposite field. It was like, what is going on?
The Trey Sweeney legacy game.
Yeah, but that was another, I think Skubal had a dozen strikeouts in that game, 7 scoreless, maybe 1 run. But just dominant performance after dominant performance for the most part. It just a really impressive season.
Major hat tip to Tarik Skubal for winning the 2025 American League Cy Young Award. And more about Tarik Skubal, because we also promised to talk about Tarik Skubal's future with the Tigers. Here we go. 3 big names: agent Scott Boras, Tigers general manager Jeff Greenberg, and Tarik Skubal himself all talked about this topic November 12th at the general manager meetings in Las Vegas. Boras and Greenberg talked in person, and Skubal talked on a conference call. We are going to take you inside those conversations. Here's agent Scott Boras.
You know, all we know is that the fans in Detroit want the Tigers to build a Tarik Barrack. You know, they, Little Caesars running around town saying "Cy Cy." So it's a kind of thing where he's built a base. Obviously, everywhere they go, they know it's Skubal Day. They understand that organization is substantially different if he's not there. And, when you're in these situations and you go through it, all we know is that we hear mostly from the fans, and the player hears from the fans, and it's kind of like it should be Scooby done, right? And if not, I think the fans would certainly think it's a Detroit doink if they don't.
Have they approached you about an extension again at this point, or is that something that you're anticipating?
We talk a lot, and through the concourse of the offseason, we'll continue to discuss. Our point of view is that we always listen. We're prepared to listen to about anything that Chris or really Scott has to say. So we'll just see how it goes.
Here's general manager Jeff Greenberg.
Yeah, look, Tarik is a Detroit Tiger. We know how good he is. We know what he's meant to this organization, especially over the last couple of years. We're not going to talk about our players in the context of trade or extension. Scott made that very clear at the end of the season press conference. I think that's in fairness to Tarik. That's in fairness to the Tigers. He's a Tiger. We're really happy to have him. Hopefully he's going to win his second Cy Young here in a couple hours. And that's really it.
Is there still a sense of due diligence of just like seeing what other teams might come to you with for him or for anyone?
Yeah, again, just not something we're going to discuss. He's a Tiger. We're not going to talk about our players in the context of trade.
I'm talking about your intentions, but are you are you fielding a lot of calls in this area?
Yeah, again, just in the context of trading our own players, it's just not something we're going to discuss in this context.
Just speaking super generally, when you look at trade deadline this year, obviously starting pitching, really high price tag there. Is it fair to draw a line between that as maybe kind of foreshadowing for what the market's going to look like this offseason, or are those two completely separate?
Just in terms of the starting pitching market?
Yeah, trade market.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's early. I mean, I think this week, part of the process this week is just starting to gather information on what that market could look like. Prices were high at the deadline. Prices were relatively high last offseason. We'll see where it goes, but I think this week begins the process of gathering information to start figuring that stuff out.
How did Flaherty's decision kind of impact how you're viewing the rotation of your needs and maybe how many arms you might want to add in the group? Yeah,
we're obviously excited that Jack's coming back. He was a big piece to what we did last year. He wanted to be back. I think it speaks to his comfort here. The fact that he obviously wants to have a big 2026 and his comfort in coming back and doing that as a Tiger. I think we'll still look to add pitching. Obviously that fills a spot that otherwise would have been a question mark, but I still think we're going to be open-minded to looking to add to both the rotation and the pen.
For Skubal, you guys have been very consistent in not talking about extensions, not talking about trades. Where does that come from, and what's kind of the reasoning behind your guys' approach when you're asked questions about a trade or an extension?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily specific to Tarik. I think in general we've been consistent. We have our players on our roster, and to discuss publicly, whether it's in the context of extensions or trades, I don't think it's really fair to the player. I think you can, easily kind of slice comments up, and they oftentimes get misinterpreted. So we have to stick with, the reality of the situation and operate in a way that we think is fair to our players and the organization. And I think we've been consistent on that.
And here's Tarik Skubal.
Your name has come up quite a bit, whether it's contract extension stuff or trade rumors. It's not the first for you. I think the first time that came up was in August of 2022 before you had your surgery. So it's not like you're a stranger to this, but what has it been like just seeing the different trade rumors and contract extension, talks out there? How are you kind of handling that as we're now in 2025 going into 2026?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's similar to kind of how 2022 went. I think a lot of that's out of my control, as especially the trade stuff. Obviously, contract extension stuff is a little bit different, but the trade stuff is out of my control. I've given everything I have to this organization, and I want to be a Tiger for a very long time. But those things, the business part of the game, they are they're just different, right? I don't get to write my own contracts in that sense. So I'm just going to do what I do and not really focus on any of that stuff. I've seen it. It's not going to impact how I go about my day to day. It's not going to impact how I'm going to attack my off season and try to become the best version of myself come spring training next year. But yeah, it's not in my control at the end of the day. And it doesn't change though that, I love the city of Detroit. Hopefully I'm here. I think that's kind of where I'm at with all that.
Chris, do you have any thoughts about the Tarik Barrack from Scott Boras, or the no comments from Jeff Greenberg, or the Detroit love from Tarik Skubal? Can we believe anything from any of these people right now?
I like Tarik Skubal, so I believe him that he likes being in Detroit, but he might just know the way to say things. I don't believe that he likes being in Detroit enough to take some sort of giant discount. But I was not expecting to hear much from Jeff Greenberg. They seem, he and Scott Harris seem pretty good at not necessarily answering any questions that they don't want to talk about. He did say that they're going to target pitching in the offseason, right? Which was not a huge surprise. That's what they've done every offseason since Scott Harris got here. He had 2 starters and a reliever his first year, 2 starters and 2 relievers his second year, 2 starters and 2 relievers last year. Now last year they finally added a big bat in Torres, but they seem to really believe in, going out and filling in the pitching gaps with free agents or on 1-year deals or 2-year deals. I will say, Scott Boras, I've never actually been in person for one of these Scott Boras scrums. His soliloquies are one of my favorite things about the MLB offseason. They're ridiculous. I'm a fan of wordplay. I come from wordplay. My mother was an English teacher. My grandfather was a literature professor. I'm from it. I'm of it. But that was poor. That was one of his worst efforts, in my opinion. I thought the Bregman Dunkin' Donuts stuff was okay. I thought he did really well with his Pete Alonso alliteration. That was good. The Skubal stuff was not great. I don't know if that's the best they can come up with, Boris Skunkworks or whatever, but I don't know what a Detroit doink is. I mean, I know, I remember Doink the Clown. He was a wrestler. I know Doink, when you hit off the upright in football, it's not a good thing, but you couldn't Detroit debacle or Motown mistake or something like that. You couldn't go better with that. And my thing is if you really, and maybe he's saving it for next year when Skubal's a free agent. But I think you got to go all in on the Scooby-Doo references, right? That's the only breakout, like a Mystery Machine or a Jinkies. Mentioned Scooby-Dum, Scooby-Doo's dim-witted Southern relative, something like that. I think that's where you got to go with it. So, yeah, a D. I'm giving Boras a D for those comments there.
Well, Scott Boras has a chance to redeem himself because he will do this again at the winter meetings in December, and he gets a chance to go back at it. So, Scott Boras, if you're listening, hope you're taking notes, and maybe you can get some of the Chris Brown wordplay into your winter meetings discussions once we get there. But as for what we've learned and what this all means, look, the Tigers are always listening on trades. For some reason, they don't want to admit it, but they're listening on Tarik Skubal trade offers. They wouldn't be doing their jobs if they weren't. However, the Tigers, at least as of now, aren't actively shopping Tarik Skubal, which means they're not trying to trade him away. Like the Tigers seem content with keeping Tarik Skubal into the 2026 season, extending him a qualifying offer after the season, and receiving draft pick compensation after the first round and before competitive balance round A in the 2027 draft after he signs elsewhere in free agency. Now, if the Tigers get an offer they can't refuse, then they'll trade Tarik Skubal to get more long-term value for the organization because he isn't going to sign a contract extension. But if there's not a trade offer that the Tigers can't refuse, if there's not something that blows the Tigers away, you can expect Skubal to be a Tiger in 2026 because the Tigers aren't going to force a Tarik Skubal trade. So if you want Tarik Skubal to be a Tiger in 2026, you should feel pretty good right now. If you want the Tigers to trade Tarik Skubal, don't hold your breath. And if you still think there's a chance Tarik Skubal signs a contract extension with the Tigers, there's no chance it's happening. Not unless Christopher Ilitch steps in with an offer that's at least $350 million. But we all know that's not happening. And I'd love to be wrong there, but I don't think I'm wrong there. That's just how I see all of this unfolding. We've seen Pittsburgh Pirates general manager Ben Cherington come out and say Paul Skeens is going to be a Pirate in 2026. The Tigers could do the same for Tarik Skubal, but they're not because they're listening. And of course they're listening. It's their jobs to listen. But as of now, I am not expecting a Tarik Skubal trade before the 2026 season, unless there is something that the Tigers cannot refuse. All right, let's get into the big two. Question one of the big two. What did we learn from general manager Jeff Greenberg about the Tigers' plan for free agency and trades at the general manager meetings in Las Vegas? The general manager meetings took place this past week. President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris, he had to leave the GM meetings early, so Jeff Greenberg filled in, and he outlined the Tigers' plan for the 2025-26 offseason. The Tigers are prioritizing pitching in free agency and trades. The main priority is the bullpen, but I think it's important that we start with the rotation. Jack Flaherty accepting the $20 million player option and returning for the 2026 season, that takes care of the biggest need in the rotation, but the Tigers are still in the market for more starting pitchers. It sounds like the Tigers are interested in lower tier starters. Chris Bassett, Lucas Giolito, Merrill Kelly, Nick Martinez, all of those guys are projected for 2-year deals. I wouldn't rule out Michael King on a 3-year or a 4-year deal, but the Tigers won't be shopping in the top tier of Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, Framber Valdez, unless Skubal gets traded. I think the Tigers feel pretty confident in Tarik Skubal, Reese Olson, Jack Flaherty, Casey Mize, Troy Melton as their 5 starters going into spring training, which is why a lower tier starter for depth purposes is more likely than a higher tier starter. And somebody always gets hurt in spring training. So that's why you can't count out the Tigers going for a Chris Bassett or Lucas Giolito or Merrill Kelly or Nick Martinez in free agency, because when someone gets hurt and the Tigers need a number 3 starter, you'd rather have one than not have one. Jeff Greenberg also mentioned Ty Madden as a starting option for the Tigers in 2026, which I thought was interesting. He missed the entire 2025 season with a shoulder injury, but he's healthy now. So that's something to keep an eye on once we get into spring training. As for the bullpen, the Tigers only have 3 relievers locked in: Will Vest, Tyler Holton, Brant Herter. That leaves 5 openings in the bullpen after the Tigers lost trade deadline acquisitions Kyle Finnegan, Rafael Montero, and Paul Sewald to free agency. The Tigers are interested in re-signing Kyle Finnegan, and Kyle Finnegan is interested in re-signing with the Tigers. There is mutual interest there. Why is the deal not already done? It's a great question. I'll give my 2 cents. What if Kyle Finnegan wants 2 years, $18 million, but the Tigers only want to give him 1 year, $10 million? If the Tigers won't go up to 2 years and Finnegan won't go down to 1 year, then we could be looking at an early standstill in negotiations between the Tigers and Kyle Finnegan. That doesn't mean the two sides won't ultimately reunite, but it could just take a little bit more time. And personally, if that is what's happening here, I think it's a good way for the Tigers to lose Kyle Finnegan. Like, if you want to get the guy, just go out and get the guy. Like, I'm an advocate for leading the market, not following the market. If the Tigers want Kyle Finnegan, the Tigers should do what it takes to get Kyle Finnegan right now, or else you risk losing Kyle Finnegan. But aside from Finnegan, the Tigers are prioritizing swing and miss relievers. That is the biggest priority of the offseason, adding swing and miss to the bullpen. That's more important than the offense. That's more important than the rotation. That's more important than a second-tier option like Kyle Finnegan. Adding swing and miss to the bullpen is the number 1 priority for the Tigers this offseason. Tigers bullpen ranked 17th in MLB with a 4.05 ERA in 2025 and 29th with a 20.1% strikeout rate. Only the Colorado Rockies bullpen had fewer strikeouts. How do you get more strikeouts? You need to miss more bats. There are 3 elite swing and miss relievers that headline the free agent market. They're all right-handers: Edwin Diaz, Devin Williams, Ryan Helsley. If the Tigers want Edwin Diaz or Devin Williams, they'll need to outbid large market teams like the New York Mets and the Los Angeles Dodgers. But Ryan Helsley fits into this Tigers obsession of low risk, high upside type moves. He is a bounce back candidate, and he could sign for 1 or 2 years, whereas Devin Williams is probably going to get 3 years. Edwin Diaz, he wants a 5-year contract. Also, the Tigers haven't shown a willingness to sign a reliever to a multi-year contract in the Scott Harris era. But if they're serious about winning the World Series in 2026, then they need to be serious about adding swing and miss to the bullpen. And that means making a legit free agent signing to add to the bullpen rather than dumpster diving for pitching projects. So I would like to see them go after Devin Williams, but at the very least, the Tigers need to go after a guy like Ryan Helsley, someone with a track record. Yes, it was a rocky finish after the trade deadline for Helsley, but he is a been there, done that, proven reliever who misses a ton of bats. That could be somebody that the Tigers want to go get if they don't want to make a big risk. But I'd like to see them risk a little bit more, get a Devin Williams, even if it takes a 3-year contract. And maybe there is one bad year in that 3-year deal for Devin Williams. But I'll take one bad year for 2 good years of Devin Williams, because the good years of Devin Williams, they're flat out nasty. So what are your thoughts on that? The rotation, the bullpen, the swing and miss priority. Are the Tigers right where they need to be on the pitching front?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're close. I think, you have Kaiser Montero is another depth arm there. But I do think that the last thing they want to do is get caught, short of a starter again and start doing pitching chaos early in the season. So I do think they will target one of those, I don't know, you want to call them budget starters, but somebody like Chris Bassett, we saw him pitching in relief very well in the playoffs. And he's a guy that he's been incredibly consistent starter for the last 5 seasons. If they could sign him to a couple of years and, maybe they don't necessarily need him in the rotation, but he's proven to be a quality reliever that can, maybe you probably don't want to spend all that money on a reliever, but you figure it out, right? You just need options there. So I do think they'll target at least one starter. And I agree with you. We knew that heading into the season. We knew that at the trade deadline, they needed more swing and miss in the bullpen. I saw today that Matt Strahm might be a trade candidate into Philadelphia. I don't know if you ever want to trade with Dave Dombrowski, but they've done it a couple of times. But yeah, they need to go out and get a power arm reliever who misses bats. It would be ideal. Those guys don't always work out. But when the Tigers were making the playoffs frequently, they kind of went out and got guys like that. You remember Valverde and his, he was a bit of a roller coaster, not quite as, Todd Jonesy roller coaster, but, they paid money to get him for multiple years. And at the end, it was all over with, but that's the life of a reliever. But during those couple good seasons, he was really useful at the back end of the bullpen. And sometimes you just got to go pay, get that arm. And as you said, there are some good options out there. I think I lean more toward Helsley just because I think you might be able to get him for a shorter deal, which is, and that's not even like personally preference. Personal preference could be, all 3 of these guys, but trying to think more like the Tigers, I think Helsley's the most likely. I
agree with you there. Thinking like the Tigers, Helsley, the more likely option, but I would like to see them go get a Devin Williams and risk it a little bit more, knowing that the upside is elite. As for the position players, everything is predicated on Gleyber Torres. If Torres accepts the 1-year, $22.025 million qualifying offer, then it's hard to envision the Tigers pursuing Alex Bregman. But if Gleyber Torres doesn't accept the qualifying offer, then you can bet the Tigers will be back in the Bregman sweepstakes once again this offseason. The Gleyber Torres decision is certainly going to impact how the Tigers maneuver throughout the rest of their offseason, specifically on the position player side. So we're still in wait and see mode there. As for question 2 of the big 2, which prospects will the Tigers protect from the Rule 5 draft by adding them to the 40-man roster? The deadline is 6 p.m. Tuesday for the Tigers to protect players eligible for the 2025 Rule 5 draft by adding them to the 40-man roster. Any eligible player left unprotected can be selected by one of the other 29 teams in the Rule 5 draft, which is December 10th. Here's how this works. Players signed at 18 years or younger have to be protected within 5 seasons, while players signed at 19 years or older have to be protected within 4 seasons. And in the Rule 5 draft, teams can select an eligible unprotected player from another team for $100,000. A player picked in the Rule 5 draft must stay on the 26-man active roster or the injured list for the entire 2026 season. If removed from the roster, the player will be placed on waivers, and if the player clears waivers, then that player will be offered back to their original team for $50,000. For the Tigers, the 40-man roster is at 40 players. So if the Tigers protect even one prospect, they'll have to make a corresponding roster move to create space on the 40-man roster. There are a lot of players eligible for the Rule 5 draft. I have picked out 7 players with help from Chris that stand out to me. Utility player Trey Cruz, second baseman, third baseman Hao-Yu Lee, catcher Tharon Lorenzo, left-hander Jake Miller, right-handed reliever RJ Pettit, catcher/first baseman Eduardo Valencia, and right-hander Troy Watson. Those are the 7 names that stand out to me. But we're going to go to Chris Brown, Tigers minor league report, our expert on the farm system. Which prospects are considered locks to be added to the 40-man roster and protected by the Tigers, and which prospects could be poached in the Rule 5 draft if the Tigers don't protect them?
Yeah, so there are 2 guys that I consider to be almost near locks, and you mentioned them. It's Hao-Yu Lee and Tharon Lorenzo. Part of that is that they were traded for. Tigers traded for those players. They like them. They're younger. Lorenzo was a top 100 prospect, around this time last year and through most of the season. And, neither of them had great seasons last year. Hao-Yu Lee at AAA, Lorenzo in AA. And so that part where the sticking on the big league roster might be difficult. But I think with both of them, a bad team, the Rockies or some other, pick another sad sack team right now, would be more than happy to just take those guys and let them fail at the big league level for a season. With Lorenzo, it's simply because you guys who could catch and have the level of raw power that he has, it's legitimate 70 grade raw power from both sides of the plate. They just don't come around very often. And you're willing to wait on a guy like that for years if you have to. And that's why I think the Tigers will keep him. Like I said, he had a down season, hit like 206 with a 32% strikeout rate in AA. He's got a really long swing. He's got a lot to work on. His defense needs some work too. He didn't even catch after the end of July. But I just don't think that they will risk losing him because of his upside. Hao-Yu Lee is a little bit tougher. I know that they really like him. Like I said, he had kind of a down season too. Right now, it looks like he might kind of top out as that Andy Ibanez type, a lefty mashing specialist who could play second base, a little bit of third base. He's got some pop. He's got some speed. He's kind of error prone at third base. So I don't know how much you want him there, but he's pretty good second baseman. And I think he's not even 23 yet, or he may be trying to turn 23 soon. So I think they still like him. There's a little bit of a logjam at those positions, but I don't think you're going to give up on him yet. And I think somebody would take him because he does a little bit of everything. Beyond that, I don't see anybody who's a real strong lock to be taken. Jake Miller is a lefty pitcher who I thought would have gotten to the big leagues had he stayed healthy this year, but he was injured for most of the year, came back at the very end, got hit by a line drive, was going to go to the Arizona Fall League and then didn't. I don't know if they're playing some sort of shenanigans there to try to get people to think that he's too injured so they don't take him. I don't know what's going on, but he's a guy who I think could help in both the rotation and the bullpen down the road if he's healthy. And then beyond that, like you mentioned, Trey Cruz. Trey Cruz does a lot of things really well. I'm not convinced he can actually hit at the big league level, but he can play shortstop. He can play center field. He's got a little bit of speed. He walks a ton. And then there's Eduardo Valencia is one of the fascinating ones because he was a backup catcher for most of his professional career. And then last year he just went bonkers. He had over 300 with 24 home runs. He split his time between first base and catcher. If he were a legitimate big league defender behind the plate, there's no doubt that they would protect him because you don't get offense like this from catchers. The problem is he might not be a legitimate big league defender at catcher or first base. And so you've got a right-handed DH type who had never really had a good season until this year. And so it's just a tough decision there. I think somebody might take him and it would be a bummer if they lost him, but I don't know if you can protect him and Lorenzo and have these kind of 4 catchers on a 40-man roster, even if he's not really a catcher. So those are most of the guys I'm thinking about.
We're going to find out. 6 p.m. Tuesday is the deadline for the Tigers to protect players from the Rule 5 draft by adding them to the 40-man roster. I've got Hao-Yu Lee and Tharon Lorenzo as locks, but time will tell. We're going to take a break. When we return, we are joined by new Detroit Tigers pitcher Dugan Darnell, a Michigan native. Everyone, I'd like to welcome Detroit Tigers pitcher Dugan Darnell to the Days of Roar podcast. Not only does Dugan pitch for the Tigers, but he is from Michigan. He grew up in Northville, graduated from Northville High School and Adrian College, and he played for the Eastside Diamond Hoppers in the United Shore Professional Baseball League in Utica. And now he pitches for his hometown team, the Detroit Tigers. Dugan Darnell, thank you for joining us. And first things first, welcome home. How does it feel to be a Tiger?
It's a dream come true, man. Appreciate you having me on here. And I'm excited and grateful for the opportunity to play for the team that I grew up watching.
So for those who don't know, Dugan made his MLB debut in August 2025 with the Colorado Rockies. Then the Tigers claimed him off waivers from the Pittsburgh Pirates here in November 2025. We will get into your MLB debut later because that was a journey in and of itself. But where were you when you found out you were claimed off waivers, and what was that entire experience like for you?
Yeah, that was a crazy couple of weeks for sure. So the first time I was claimed off waivers by Pittsburgh, I was at Meyer with my mom. Well, we were checking out. So then, yeah, that was crazy. And then about a week later, I was getting ready to go to the gym and to therapy. And I got a call about 10 or 11 from my agent. And yeah, that was an exhilarating day, exhilarating moment. My wife and I will never forget that.
I'm always kind of fascinated by that part of the game where, like, do you even know that you're on waivers like this? Do you know that until you get claimed?
Yeah, it's different every time. They don't have to tell you. And, there's so much of it that I don't understand still to this day. But yeah, I mean, it's wild to get a phone call and then, everything's different from that moment on. But it's part of the business. So you got to just roll with the punches and, just control what you can,
How much contact have you had with the Tigers? Because, there are all sorts of these off-season dates where rosters might get moved and changed some more tomorrow.
Yeah, I've heard from quite a few people. I talked to Jeff Greenberg and, maybe 5 or 6 other staff, medical and, travel. So they've been extremely, outgoing and easy to talk to. Every question I have is answered. So yeah, I'm grateful for their communication and transparency, and obviously it's been less than a week. So, I got a lot more people to meet and I'm looking forward to it.
When you hear you've been claimed by the Tigers, what kind of goes through your mind right away? I don't know if that takes you back to where it all began, right? I mean, you're a kid who grows up in Northville. You've always been a big Tigers fan. Does it take you back to like your favorite Tigers memories, some of your favorite Tigers players, things like that?
Yes. And that was, I try not to think about, best case scenarios because I have no control. So there's, the best thing I can do for myself in my career is to do what I can to prepare to create the best skill set that I can. So, wherever I go, I could be the best that I can be. But in the back of my mind, my parents, my wife and I, everyone talking about how cool would it be to go to Detroit? That'd be best case scenario. And when it happened, it made 12-year-old me happy.
Because of the fact that you're a Tigers fan, I mean, you grew up one and to this day, you still are one. Now you play for the Tigers, but have you been able to watch from afar over the past 2 seasons as the Tigers have gotten back to their winning ways, making the postseason in back-to-back seasons? Like, what has that been like from a fan standpoint? And then what does it mean for you now to be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously what every fan wants. They want a team to be prideful of, and a team that's making playoff pushes is exactly that. And they've been playing really good baseball, really clean. Pitching has been phenomenal. Offense has been great. It's been crazy to watch Skubal go on his on the run that he's been on, and hopefully I can learn from him in a couple of areas and help the team in whatever way that I can.
And so, I've been following Michigan prep baseball for a while now. I do remember the 2015 class because Nick Plummer was going to be the first rounder in forever. And I don't remember you. I don't follow it that closely, but I was curious, if you were out and about on this sort of, in-state showcase circuit or, were you in all-star games and stuff?
So I was a late bloomer for sure. But I was an infielder. I was a shortstop in high school. I think I graduated high school at 5'9", around there. And then I graduated college at 6'2" or 6'3". So I grew a little late. And obviously I didn't even try pitching until my senior year of college. So it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. But yeah, I'm close friends with Nick. We know a coach with the Motor City Hit Dogs, and we're helping out with a couple teams there. So I see him in the off seasons. But yeah, I was not anywhere on any of those prospect sheets, and that's just to say, people peak at different times and they have different stories, and, everyone is different.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. I think you mentioned Tarik Skubal. I think he had one D1 offer, I want to say. I remember back in the day, Justin Verlander who I'm sure you grew up watching plenty of. He was supposed to get drafted by the Pirates and they didn't take him. And so he had to go to Old Dominion and people come from wherever, but it is kind of fascinating. Whenever I hear like, he didn't start pitching until late. I'm like, okay, he probably still pitched. He just wasn't pitching, but like you legit did not pitch at all basically until senior year at Adrian.
Yeah, I truly loved infield. I loved hitting, and I felt like I needed to put all my time and effort there. And that's where I could help the team the most, I should say. And then, my senior year, I was like, if I'm done, I don't want any what ifs, like looking back on like, well, what if I tried this? What if I did that? So I'm going to leave it all on the field. And I'm glad I explored that.
It was the breaking ball that got you the hitter?
Yeah, well, more of changeup because I was a lefty hitter. So the changeup got me.
Yeah, I'll never understand how anybody can hit a changeup. If it's the same arm speed or whatever, and it's just 10 miles an hour slower. Like, what are you supposed to do? I don't get it.
Well, it helped me pitching too because being a hitter for my whole life, I kind of understand what hitters are looking for and, what's easier to hit than other pitches. So having that mindset and also the frustration of striking out, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore.
What is the backstory of that? Going from being a third baseman to being a pitcher, like when did you realize, okay, I'm good enough to pitch as a senior at Adrian College? And then when do you realize, okay, I can pitch at a level beyond college? Like, how does that kind of all come together? And when did you pitch for the first time?
I played for South Oakland A's growing up, which is a travel ball organization around the Metro Detroit area. And before every college season, all of my buddies from that team, we'd get together and go hit at the facility. And there was a radar gun just running at all times. And that's when I kind of like hopped up there half jokingly, seeing how hard I could throw off the mound. And it was harder than expected. A couple buddies saying, hey, you should probably do something about it. That's when I kind of was like, why not? It's my senior year. Might as well. So I went to Coach Rainey at Adrian, my head coach there, and he was all about it. I didn't have any off speed, but I would play 8 innings at third base and then go close the 9th inning just throwing fastballs. And it wasn't, I had to do arm care at first. First couple outings in fall ball were not easy. I had to do a lot of figuring it out, I guess, with arm care and all that. So once we figured that out, then I kind of realized this was like a repeatable product. And then obviously the season went really well. That's when I was like, I think there's more in the tank here because if I'm having this amount of success and I know I can throw harder and I don't even have off speed right now, the sky's the limit. And so, I got really lucky with opportunities, training at 2SP. Then when I went to the USPBL, the DBS program there, all that kind of stuff was like a perfect storm that helped me just like shape my skill set, if you will.
I spent a little time in Adrian. I knew a girl at Siena Heights. And this is neither here nor there, but I was looking at Baseball Reference, and it looks like you're the 4th big leaguer ever from Adrian College. It's you, a teammate, I assume of yours, Ryan Doro, and then 2 dudes from like the early 19th century. So I don't know how cool that feels to be like just representing early 20th century, I should say, not 19th century, the early 1900s. Yeah, I mean, is that cool knowing that you made it from this tiny school, or is it more about the journey?
I mean, it's absolutely cool. It's humbling and just lets me know how rare it is, and stop and smell the flowers, if you will. But it is also just part of the journey. It's humbling. It's really, really cool. Just, it kind of helps me realize how rare it actually is. But, as to your point, it's just, another stop along the journey. It's realistically, I'm always about the journey as a whole and knowing that how special it is. Each stop means the world to me. So just trying not to hang my hat on one thing in particular and just keep moving and enjoy the journey and give everything I have at every stage.
What happened after you graduated from Adrian College in 2019? Obviously, you went undrafted, but then you took a marketing job in downtown Chicago. Were you like playing baseball at that time? Where were you working? Like, what was going on in your life at that time? And what ultimately leads you to indie ball there not too long after?
Yeah, that was a wild summer. So I graduated in 2019. Earlier that year, I had signed for a business job in Chicago as a recruitment consultant for financial advisors. And I loved it. It took me like 5 interviews to get that job. So I was really passionate about it. And after that season, came and went, I understood that pitching was an opportunity that I wanted to, exhaust every single way that I could go about it to make sure that, when I start this business job, I gave everything I had. There's no what ifs, right? I don't have to look back and have any regrets. And so I went and played collegiate summer ball with Rockford Rivets right after I graduated. And I pitched, I think, 17 innings there. It was like 3 or 4 weeks, and it went well. I started, developing the curveball. I had a big curveball back then, and my splitter. And so that went really well. And then I was asking them, like, are you guys hearing anything? Like, is there any sort of option in front of me? And they just, they were working really hard for me, but there was nothing. It was too late. I hung it up. I thought that was it for baseball altogether. So I hung it up. And I got moved into an apartment in Chicago and started the business job. And then, 3 days into that job, I got a call from the Gary Railcats and the American Association. And it was no question for me. I knew that's where my passion was, my heart was. I knew that I needed to go, figure this stage out before I could move forward with business. So I quit the job on the spot and took a train to get to the Railcat Stadium. And then we got on a bus and drove 12 hours to Iowa, where I made my first pro outing, a day later or whatever. So that was a crazy, I guess, start to my pro career. And then about a month later, they released me and sent me to, it kind of was like a release and trade type thing with USPBL. So, I always say when one door closes, another one opens. And, I went to the USPBL at the end of 19. I learned a good bit and made some good relationships. And, that set me up for success.
Can you help us understand what the indie ball experience is like? And then what was it like playing for the Diamond Hoppers in the USPBL, which is here in Utica, Michigan?
Indie ball is grindy, man. There's not a whole lot of resources, but there's a lot of opportunity. So everyone there is, fighting, scratching tooth and nail to get a shot and to get an opportunity and to play for the love of the game. Everyone there truly loves the game. And, I made some great friendships there, some that'll last, the rest of my life. So I'm always thankful for that. I got a lot better at the game and it gave me an opportunity to develop further. And then in the USPBL, I had a blast, man. It was grindy, but I had a lot of support from my friends and family in the area. They came out frequently and, I just truly had fun playing, and getting better. And just, I knew that it wasn't going to last forever. So I might as well make the most of my time there while I was there. So, I got better at pitching. I had fun with my friends and family in the area and, we made the most of it.
So it was 2 years in indie ball, and then you signed with the Colorado Rockies in February of 2021. How does that come to be, and how many emails did you send?
So that 2020 season, I felt like I had really, really good stuff as far as comparing it to the guys that I was training with at 2SB. I'm like, man, my stuff plays. I know it does. And, I had really good numbers and all that stuff. It wasn't adding up to me. So I knew with COVID, it was kind of creating an issue where they were taking jobs away, not adding them. So, but I just wanted to make sure I had no regrets, and I was exhausting every option. So I found as many emails as I could and I sent off as many emails as I could, with my game film, TrackMan numbers from bullpens. Thankfully I got hits back from a couple organizations and, the Rockies gave me a shot.
Yeah. And, your numbers, look really good in A ball, and then you hit AA and it's a little bit of a speed bump, but then you're off to Australia. How did it come to be that you went off to the Canberra Cavalry?
So same thing. That year I felt like I had more to learn, more to develop. I felt like my product wasn't good enough where there was room for it to be better. So I wanted to play winter ball, and I knew the numbers in AA and 22 were fine, but they weren't good enough to go to where I wanted to go and do what I wanted to do. And so they had an opportunity in Puerto Rico that fell through, an opportunity in Dominican that fell through. So I, again, kind of took it in my own hands and went to LinkedIn and contacted the GM for Canberra. And we set something up. The Rockies facilitated it from there. And it was a great setup. I got exactly what I was trying to get, 18, 20 more innings to develop, work on my stuff. I'll figure out, what what plays, what doesn't, and how to be consistent. I met some great people over there. Just a really good setup and another great stop in my journey.
And I know from following the minor leagues pretty closely that Colorado's system is not always the best for pitchers, as Colorado in the big league is not always the best for pitchers. Did that play into your development at all? I know you talked about in Adrian, you were just throwing fastballs, and then at Rockford you started throwing a curve and a splitter. Like, once you got to pro ball, was it like, I need to refine these pitches, or I need to focus on this because I can't pronate or whatever? What led you to developing your secondary offerings?
The splitter always was just comfortable for me. It's kind of a feel pitch. The more you throw it, the better you feel with it. And that I felt was like more natural for me. And so that still today is my number one off-speed weapon. But it's before that or after that, the curveball being in elevation, that was the reason why I got rid of that and went to a gyro slider, because the way that the gyro slider spin, like the bullet spin, is less affected in elevation. And then same thing, I'm a high slot pronator. So that gyro slider is a little bit easier to throw out of that arm slot. And yeah, I mean, that was a big part. And with the elevation, I wasn't going to switch to a 2-seam because my 4-seam is a big strength. Yes, it was diminished in elevation, but we were kind of forced to just figure out how to use it a little bit differently. And, with elevation, yes, we do lose a little bit of movement, but there was a lot to gain in like A to B. So the ball would go from my hand to the plate faster in elevation than it would at sea level. That we figured out, like, hey, if I could mix all three of my pitches and make them all look the same, you're going to be more effective more frequently. Kind of just little things like that kind of help you, hone your arsenal and hone your skills and, figure out how to make the most of wherever you're at.
So more than 4 years after you sign with the Rockies, you make your MLB debut with the Rockies. It was August 1st. 2025. You didn't pitch until the final 2 innings, but the Rockies were down by 9 runs to the Pirates in the top of the first inning. And then they came all the way back to win 17-16. You pitched for the Rockies in the 8th and 9th innings. Were not responsible for any of those runs. When you entered, the Rockies were trailing 16-10, but then you slammed the door on the Pirates, and the Rockies support you with like 7 runs in the final 2 innings, and you end up winning 17-16. You earned your first MLB win in your first MLB game. Take me back to that. I mean, it was one of the best comebacks in Rockies history, and you were a key part of it all.
We had a lot of fun as a team. That was, like a little league game. For me and my family, that was a dream come true to not only, obviously pitch in the major leagues I worked my whole life to do, but to have it play out like that, it was like a storybook ending. We had a lot of support there, a lot of friends and family. But yeah, I mean, I was super nervous when the game started because, different environment, not used to that. But, as I got closer to when I thought I was going to pitch, it's kind of business as usual. I had a job to do. Especially when I started warming up, it was kind of like, all right, I'm good. This is where I need to be. This is what I worked my whole life for. This is my job. And from there on out, it's control you can, and I did to the best of my ability.
You pitched 11 2/3 innings in 9 games for the Rockies in 2025. What did you learn about yourself at the big league level in 2025 that you'll carry with you into 2026 with the Tigers?
I learned a lot. I learned that I can handle that environment. I am built for it, and that my stuff will play. I don't need to do anything more than what I'm capable of. So, when I do my work, my preparation, both in the off season, spring training, all that, it's just sharpening the toolbox. All my weapons are good enough. They will play. And, it kind of helps me just put the nerves to the side and just get the job done whenever my name is called.
All right, and before we get out of here, I want to ask about the injury. You landed on the injured list in late August, suffering torn left hip labrum that required surgery. The surgery took place in late September in Denver. How did the injury happen? What's the timeline for recovery? And I guess when can Tigers fans maybe expect you to be ready for MLB games in 2026?
Yeah, so it partially happened a little bit earlier in the year. In May, I opened a game, started a game, and slipped. So I've been kind of like throwing through it for most of the year. So getting it fixed altogether is a blessing. And then, but late August was kind of unfortunate. I took a comeback line drive. It hit me in the right hip, but in an attempt to get out of the way, my left hip popped. My left foot was stuck in the ground and I turned towards second base. And unfortunate, but the surgery went well and recovery's going really well. I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. So I'm very thankful that I was able to get it fixed and that there's, almost 100%, return to play and get back, get strong, probably pitch in a better situation physically than I was all year last year, which gives me a lot of confidence. And then, so we don't know exactly when the return to play date will be, but kind of just, figuring out it's a long process. It'll be about 6, 7, 8 months. So I would say May would be a good opportunity, good time, sometime in May, barring, if there's a setback or if I'm going, smooth sailing ahead of schedule. So there's a lot of unknown in front of us, but I trust the Tigers medical staff, and I'm gonna be giving it everything I've got every day. And again, just super excited to help the organization and represent the city the right way.
And my last question is how nice is it to have a strong support system of people who let you chase your dream around the Midwest and the Southwest and the South Pacific, and maybe drive you while you're doing podcasts?
Yeah, I couldn't do it without my support system. My wife, my parents, my brother, and then all of our friends and family that follow so closely. I have a big family, and we have people all over the country. So, wherever I go, I have support, and, it makes me feel like I'm playing not just for myself, but for them, for the city that I play for. And, being able to play for the Tigers is like out of this world for me, because not only do I have my family here, but all my friends, all of our close family friends. So extremely gratifying and humbling. And I just can't be more excited to be part of this organization.
All right, Dugan, thank you for joining us to share your journey from growing up in Northville to pitching for the Tigers. The entire state of Michigan is cheering for you, and we can't wait to see you wearing the Old English D at Comerica Park in the 2026 season. Thank you again for joining the Days of Aurora podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Everyone, that was Dugan Darnell, right-handed reliever for the Detroit Tigers and a Michigan native. We have more to discuss this week, including Gleyber Torres' qualifying offer and Kevin McGonigle's timeline. But first, let's take a break. We're back. Thanks again to Dugan Darnell for joining us this week. And once again, welcome home to the Michigan native joining the Detroit Tigers. A couple more things to discuss. Gleyber Torres and Kevin McGonigle. Will Gleyber Torres accept or decline the 1-year, $22.025 million qualifying offer? We talked about this at the top of the show, but I want to get into it a little bit more. Gleyber Torres wants a 4-year contract. So if teams are willing to go there, as his agent has been gauging the market, then expect him to decline the qualifying offer, stay in free agency, and try to get that 4-year contract. But if teams aren't willing to go to 4 years, then expect him to accept the qualifying offer, returning to the Tigers. But I think there might even be another layer to all of this. You go back to December of 2024. Gleyber Torres signs a 1-year, $15 million contract with the Tigers. His goal was to increase his value, return to free agency, and secure $100 million. 1 year later, Torres has increased his value a little bit, but because of his poor second half and the ensuing sports hernia surgery, he's not going to get the $100 million that he wanted. And remember, I've been hearing a lot of 3 years, $45 million. That's a long ways from $100 million. But I still think Gleyber Torres can get to $100 million. Here's how. He's very young. He is going to turn 29 in mid-December, so he's still in his prime. To get to $100 million, to me, it makes sense to accept the qualifying offer for 1 year, $22 million, and then return to free agency and try to get 4 years, $80 million. And just like that, he gets the 5 years, $100 million that he wanted when he initially signed with the Tigers, except he's just getting it over the duration of 2 contracts. 1 year, $22 million from the Tigers in 2026, then 4 years, $80 million from a different team in 2027 to 2030. And if that happens, he would be a free agent again after his age 33 season, probably playing on 1-year deals until his career ends. But I think accepting the qualifying offer is maybe the best way for Gleyber Torres to make the most money. And that's the ultimate goal for every player, right? Make money, win championships. Like that's how Tarik Skubal has described it to me before. That is the goal for a player. You make your money, you win your championships. Those are the 2 things that players want the most. If I'm Gleyber Torres, I'm taking the $22 million qualifying offer. I think that's ultimately, well, it's just going to happen because I don't think any team is going to offer him 4 years right now. Not coming off the bad second half, not coming off the sports hernia surgery. We'll know more by 4 p.m. Tuesday, which is the deadline for Gleyber Torres to decide whether he wants to accept or decline. But if you're Gleyber Torres, are you doing it? 1 year, $22 million, returning to the Tigers? Like, is that the way that you can maximize your long-term earnings? Or do you think maybe it's a better path for him to be a free agent and try to get that 4-year deal, or maybe have to settle for a 2 or 3 year deal if things don't work out?
Yeah, it's tough for me because I try to think of what I would do in his situation versus what is most likely to happen. And yeah, like you said, I don't think anybody's giving him a 4-year deal, particularly if he's got a qualifying offer attached. They're going to pay him for however many millions of dollars and lose a draft pick.
And if he returns, he won't have the qualifying offer next time around.
Yeah. Now, the other side of that is, and he is young in terms of calendar, but he reminds me of, I don't know if anybody plays pickup basketball, but he's that old dad out in the court with double knee braces, hitting bank shots and doing behind the back passes in slow motion that somehow get through. Like, he's got an old man game in baseball terms. Like, he's not a super athlete, right? He's not a good runner. He's not a great defender. He just makes really good swing decisions and he hits line drives and he's a good quality professional offensive player. And I just don't know. Someone like that kicking the can down the road, it's a little bit more dangerous because those skills are going to go away at some point, even if the physical ability has already left. I don't know. It's tough. If you can get a multi-year deal, I'd say you have that secure, then absolutely go for it. And by that, I mean, I would take a 3-year deal, but certainly, like you said, he wants a 4-year deal. That's it's hard for me to picture that happening unless there's somebody out there who just absolutely loves him. So I do expect him to accept that qualifying offer, come back and be a quality player for the Tigers next year.
And the trickle-down effect. Infield prospect Kevin McGonigle, he won the Arizona Fall League MVP. He plays shortstop, second base, third base. When is this guy going to make his MLB debut? I am targeting mid-August 2026. I know that's going to upset a lot of Tigers fans, but General Manager Jeff Greenberg said the Tigers want to prioritize his development going into 2026, which tells you everything you need to know. The Tigers made AAA Toledo a priority for Jackson Jobe before Jackson Jobe made his MLB debut in September 2024. And I expect the same to be true for Kevin McGonigle in 2026. I do not expect him to make the Tigers opening day roster in 2026. I expect him to play for AAA Toledo to begin 2026. And I expect him to stay there until mid-August. And that's when I'm expecting the Tigers to promote him for his MLB debut. Here's why. If the Tigers wait until mid-August, Kevin McGonigle will retain his rookie eligibility into 2027, which means the Tigers will be eligible for the prospect promotion incentive. So imagine this. Kevin McGonigle gets about 125 at-bats in 2026, maintaining his rookie eligibility. Then he helps in the postseason, and then he makes the 2027 opening day roster, already having like 30 games of experience under his belt. And if he wins 2027 AL Rookie of the Year, because he's already made adjustments in the big leagues from the year prior, then the Tigers get a top draft pick. To me, that sounds like the best case scenario for the Tigers. Give him a little bit of a taste in 26, let him help you in the postseason, and then let's get the prospect promotion incentive going in 2027. You can do all that while still giving Kevin McGonigle, some opportunity in 2026 and then allowing him to help you in the 2026 postseason as well. So that's how I see things unfolding for the Tigers. I think we will see Kevin McGonigle making his MLB debut in mid-August 2026, not in late March 2026. Chris, do you have any thoughts on that theory? And if that is the case, are the Tigers making the wrong choice by waiting until mid-August as opposed to late March? Would that be a mistake if they go that route?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a mistake. I think under Scott Harris, we have not seen them send somebody directly from AA to the big leagues yet. You touched on it. Jackson Jobe made a pit stop in Toledo, but he still went to Toledo, and McGonigle hasn't been to AAA yet. So it just kind of follows their pattern. If it were me, he's on my opening day roster. He's going to be one of your two best options at shortstop, third base, or second base, one of those two. Obviously, he's not an ideal big league shortstop, but he's going to be one of the better hitters that you could bring north with you. But it doesn't sound like they're going to do it. And yet, I think you're right that there are basically 3 options for when they bring him up. One is opening day, like I said, or the first 2 weeks. The other one is late August, maybe right around his birthday, actually. His birthday is August 18th. And the third one, though, is this is kind of the old school thinking, right? Would be somewhere in like the first week of June, second week of June. So he clears the Super 2 threshold and the Tigers get an extra year of team control. You don't see teams do that as much anymore because of the option of the prospect promotion incentive, which not only gives you a draft pick if you get a rookie of the year, but also if, sometime in the next few years, you get a top 3 finish in the MVP voting. So it behooves them to bring him up either at the start of next year or, as you said, at the end of last year and go full bore for Rookie of the Year in 2027. I don't know. Like I said, I think he's probably ready for the big leagues. Like, he'll struggle like all rookies do, but he's the sort of guy who can figure it out, I think, within a month to 6 weeks. And he would be one of your better offensive players by the end of the year and give you the best chance to win with Tarik Skubal theoretically on the team. But it doesn't seem like the way they're going to play it. So I think you're right. Probably late August.
All right, let's get out of here. Thanks to Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report for co-hosting with me this week. Thanks to everyone out there for listening to the latest episode of Days of Roar. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. Drop us a rating. Comment what you think about the show, and please stick with freep.com/sports for the latest Tigers coverage. I would like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, and our magical producer, Robin Chan. For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Evan Petzold. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go in peace.